Hello there. You're probably not going to see all too much for the next little bit here. I'm going to be eating some trail mix. Don't mind me doing that. So this is for another IRL. This is not a daily walk video. Sorry. But how freaking salty this is. Making thirsty. It is this kind of trail mix. Pretty good. But anyways, so I wanted to yeah, don't focus on the visuals too much for this video. I'm just gonna say that much. Rest of my roommate's bed in his area, so you get to see that. There's our lovely little window. Here's my bed with my my college pillow, my blanket, my pillow back there. Yeah, not very much to, and the big gray one, if you couldn't tell. Whatever. Okay, so, yeah, this is the floor. Say hi, floor. Oh my god. Okay. So, in this video, I want to just talk about, kind of just share a little bit of some of the actual, stories and feelings that I had, with my study abroad trip in Sydney, Australia, this last year, this last semester, in particular to the process of going there, and the first couple of days there, and maybe also the last couple of days and coming back, perhaps, but we'll see. So, okay, where do I start? So when it got to July, this last summer, so I had been working, doing some landscaping stuff with my dad and his boss's company, and it was pretty hard work. It was pretty tiring. Also paid pretty well, so that was definitely very nice. And it was really nice to be able to, make some good money before I went off on this big trip, and spend a little bit of time with my dad, even though it wasn't like, super personal for the actual work hours, but and when I wasn't working, I was trying to make sure to spend plenty of time with my family, my brother, my mom, my dad, and my two cats and my two dogs, and so then it got pretty close to the time, where I was supposed to leave, and it was actually just a couple days before that. I think it might have literally just been the day before that I was supposed to leave. It was my mom's birthday, actually, I think we actually ended up celebrating her birthday the day before that, you know. Um, just because we knew that, on her actual birthday, I'd be trying to make sure I had every last little bit of thing in order. You know, there's a lot of stuff. I had my 2 suitcases, which are down there, and my backpack there, although it wasn't filled with the same stuff it is now. And, I was trying to make sure, I had all of my things in order, I had all my important documents, all my clothes, toiletries, my money, all the important things that I would need to bring for the whole time that I was there, of course, all the good stuff. And a couple of, maybe a couple of small little things from home, but, nothing crazy. So, it was really nice getting to do that. We actually, it's been one of the things that my mom wanted to do, when we celebrated her birthday, was to do some painting. And I didn't know what to paint right off the bat, but I'm just gonna go ahead and show you all. So I painted, if you can't tell what this is, just know, painting of the Sydney Opera House. It was based on a really cool picture that I found online. And, and I kept that one there at home. I didn't bring any of my paintings or anything like that when I left, but I did. It was just a nice little thing, be like, just thinking ahead to the whole experience and whatnot, and kind of just having that nice little moment of being in the moment, but also thinking ahead of what was to come. And so then, anyways, those last couple of days, or I should say maybe at least like that last week, maybe 2, it was honestly like a bit hard to believe that I was actually going on this journey, because see, like I felt like beforehand that like this thing I talked about a lot, across the last couple of months, that I'd, this whole program that I'd signed up for, I felt like there was very much a part of me that kind of just felt like, oh, this is just, a thing that like I'm just talking about, that it's just like, this is something that, I don't know. I don't really know how to put it, but it didn't really quite feel real. It's not entirely. Until like those last couple of weeks. And really that last weekend and whatnot, I was really trying to make sure, I'm gonna try to make sure I'm spending as much time as I can with my loved ones, because, I'm not gonna be able to see them again in, a couple of months. And that really felt a bit scary, just really, to be honest, to think about. And when we left, the day after my mom's birthday, when it was time for me to leave, we drove up to the Cincinnati airport. Just a good drive away from our home. But the whole time, I felt like, I feel like that, I mean, maybe, obviously it's not the same thing, but I felt like, you know, if you've ever tried to comprehend maybe a little bit of the perspectives of, people who've gone to the moon, or people who've, um, had any sort of, you know, lifelong trip away from home. That's, really how it is. I felt just, I felt both very, very curious, and so excited and so eager to see what was ahead. But I also felt like, that there was very much a part of me that felt like this might be the last time that I ever get to see my family. And I mean, it didn't, you know, whilst I'm here, I'm back. I've been back for a while, but it's hard to deny that's a little bit of how I felt at that time. I knew that I'd probably be safe. I'm not really the type of person to do stupid shit. And, I could always contact my parents. I could always call them, see how they're doing, I'd already figured out my phone plan. I was already, and part of it was I was able to, make these international calls and texts and whatnot. I didn't have to worry about it. And I'm so very grateful for that. But, so I kind of I don't remember exactly what it was that I talked about or felt per se when I was in that car, but I remember maybe just like a little bit. There was this. I think that I remember this kind of instance where I was sharing some kind of joke or something with my younger brother in the back seats, but I had this sort of sad smile, and especially once we got to the airport, and and I had to hug my mom and my brother goodbye before, and then my dad brought me into the airport, and that's also my first time being in an airport, so I was like, I don't know where anything's at, really. And I found my first spot, and it was so fucking scary. It was so hard. It was like, I hugged my dad, and I don't remember what he said exactly, but I know that he was praying for me. I know that he was hoping. Oh my god, I'm fucking crying. I know that he was really sad, but he was also really proud of me. And it was hard. And it was like, I'm trusting. I have to, I'm going to need to trust. I'm going to need to have faith in these next many hours, because I can't control what will happen. I don't know what the flights are going to feel like, and I was so scared out of my mind. But so I went onto the first one there. I boarded, and I told the pilot, I said, you know, hey, I'm a first time flyer. Um, I'm feeling really anxious. I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure you know what you're doing, but I just, you know, I wanted to ask if it'd be possible for to have someone, you know, just check on me after for this, you know. And he said, sure, you know, and he said, you know, congratulations. And he told me that it was going to be, you know, it was going to be pretty short. It was going to be a pretty smooth flight. You know, it was just from Cincinnati to Chicago. You know, it wasn't even enough. It wasn't even really a full hour. It was, I think it was like 40, 50 minutes long. And it went by pretty smoothly, you know. And I got there and I was like, I got to Chicago, you know, and actually I got to take a couple of pictures um, up in the cockpit of the plane, which was pretty cool. And you know, I also got this little first time flyer thing, which actually let me get here. Let me pull it out. Give me a second. No. So I flew with United Airlines for the whole time I was there, and this is what I got for my first flight. You know, and it's really cool getting this. You know, I don't think I'll be able to forget that. And that was like, oh my god, okay, so like, I just survived. I went on my first flight ever, you know, and now I'm in Chicago, now I'm in Illinois, you know, and I'd never been there before, you know, and, you know, I was looking around, you know, the airport. I was looking outside the windows. It was a bright, sunny day there, and you know, and then I contacted my parents, and I was like, okay, you know, I'm at, you know, Chicago Airport, you know, O'Hare, and he congratulated me, and you know, and and then, you know, and then over the next many hours, you know, you know, I found my way towards where I was supposed to go, you know, for the next flight to LAX, and you know, I got lost. I'm not gonna lie, I got lost. I got really, really confused and honestly a bit stressed just trying to look around that place. Um, but managed to find my way, you know, and you know, then I hopped on the flight, and then you know, it was a bit had a bit more, um, you know, had a bit more turbulence, and I felt hold off, but I was like, okay, it's not as bad as it's not as bad as I thought I was gonna feel, you know, and you know, it just felt like I kind of felt sometimes a little bit, sort of like when you're in a car and it's just shaking a little bit, but you know, it's nothing crazy really, and other than that, that felt nice, and you know, and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to Los Angeles. You know, I never been to California. I've never, I've never been on the western side of the country. Believe it or not, I never been to anything further west than pretty much western Kentucky. Um, well, I don't even know if I've really gone to properly western Kentucky, to be honest. But anyways, so you know, on these flights here, you know, on the first flight there, I think I just listened to some music. On the second one here from Chicago to Los Angeles, I watched a couple of. I think might have watched a couple of movies or listened to some music. I don't really remember right off, you know. And and then I finally got to Los Angeles, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm here!" And it was like definitely starting to get a bit dark, it was sunset and whatnot, and I was just like, "Wow, I'm so close to the ocean here." I've and I really, I really wondered what, I was like, I wonder what it'd be like if I had, you know, gone around and, maybe explored LA for just like a little bit there. But, I didn't think it'd be a great idea. And I didn't really want to deal with the whole shenanigans of trying to get in and out of that airport, and all that. And, Los Angeles was way bigger than anything I'd ever been in before. I didn't know, I didn't really know anything about California all that much, to be honest. You know, also I'm glad I did. But yes, it's not really what we're here to talk about, is it? And and then to, I went to have my last meal, um, while I was there. So I had some Panda Express. Wasn't really anything particularly special. It was just like orange chicken, pretty much. I was like, wow, this is the last meal that I'm having here in the United States for, the next, for quite a while now. And and then I went to the area where I was supposed to be waiting for the Sydney, for the plane to arrive, or to be all fixed up or whatever it was for the Sydney trip, and then I met this, as I was sitting there, I met this, I met this Australian, um, bloke, and um, and I was just telling him, I was, there was I met some people, a handful of people when I was in these airports. I didn't really tell them, too much about what I was doing, but I was just like, kind of just the gist of, hey, I'm, having my first international trip. I'm gonna be studying in, Sydney, and say I was talking to this guy here, and he was telling me that he had actually, you know, really happy that he had come here, but he was pretty eager to get back on home to, his wife and kids, you know, and I just asked him some things about what he thought about, the country, like, what he thought about our food, and he was like, no, it's too greasy. um, we exchanged some pleasantries for a little bit, which is kind of nice. I mean, I didn't really, I think just having someone to just talk to, even if it wasn't really anything that deep, just kind of helped me feel a bit more like, okay, I'm not crazy, like, you know, like I have something to just distract myself a little bit here, um, you know, a little bit of sense of, I'm going to be okay, I'm expressing what I'm feeling out. I'm not having to hold this all in entirely, but you know, and man, this next little part here honestly just felt wild. Just the going, the whole flight, from Los Angeles to Sydney. I mean, it felt like it would never freaking end. It felt like it would never freaking end. It was so long. It was like what, 13, 14 hours or something. And, and I knew it was a really big plane too, like for sure. And it was like super jam packed, you know, and I'm very fortunate that I'm very glad that I was able to have this an aisle seat for all my flights to there because man, it would have been really annoying to be stuck between some other people for that long of a flight. And yeah, I did have to get up a couple of times to let the other people on my side um, you know get out so they could go use the bathroom and whatnot. But oh my god, it felt like it just felt so long. And like I tried to sleep. I tried to, I had I had some fairly comfortable clothes on. I had my travel pillow. The seat I was in was, it's pretty nice overall. Nothing crazy, but it was okay. And I thought, I'm gonna try to get some sleep here. You know, might as well. That's such a long time, and you know, um, whatnot. And but I wasn't able to. I tried. I really tried, and I was only able to just partially doze off. But I think I was honestly just too anxious to really do it. And plus, I've also just never really been able to sleep that way. I've never really been able to sleep sitting. Just not had any luck with that. And so I ended up watching some movies on the way there. I actually ended up rewatching. I think it was all three of Back to the Future. So that was pretty cool. It was a nice little thing to distract myself with for a couple hours. And and we had a nice couple. We had like, well, I say nice, but I mean like how nice is airplane food really? Um, but we had a couple of meals, a few snacks. I'm glad that I drank just water. I think it was on the way there, but man, I really should have gotten up a few more times because I just felt this like constant just like pressure on my ears for much of the time. I was just like, what is this? Like I had felt some of it earlier on, but you know, it was just a really strange sensation. But so eventually, we get close. Within an hour or two of being closer to Australia, the sun's starting to pop out, and and then there are a bunch of people. They're starting to wake up, and then I talk for a couple minutes with this one Australian student, who is returning back home. Or study abroad in the U.S., I believe it was, and and then it was just we were just kind of talking about the whole thing there, and she was like, I hope you have a great experience. I was like, thanks. We had to fill out card. We had to make sure we didn't have any kind of snacks or anything, any food or drink or whatever, um, for us in the airport, all that good stuff. And honestly, it was really weird thinking like, wait, so like, when I left Los Angeles, it was it was it was a certain day, and then when I got in Sydney, it was 2 days later, 2 calendar days later. I was like, what the fuck? But, anyways, I don't. Maybe it's just the whole part about the flights and the details is just kind of boring, and I'm sorry, but you know, let me just get on. Let me get on with this. Okay, so I, you know, eventually landed. We eventually landed there, and I was like, you know, and as we, you know, we're getting up out of our seats, as we, you know, we're heading towards the, you know, the front door of the plane and into their, you know, the airport, and I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh my god, oh my god. I was like, I'm actually here. I'm actually in a different country now. I'm in a different continent on the other side of the world. And oh my god, it was so unbelievable. It was like I said earlier, it was like, hello, you have stepped on another planet. I mean, because, like, that's kind of what it felt like, you know? And, you know, and then I went through, you know, I went through the airport. I got lost a little bit looking around for the first part because I didn't know exactly where to go. And I saw my first, kind of just random store in the airport there with just a bunch of, like, random things. I didn't buy anything there. I was like, I don't know what any of these brands are. um, you know, I was like, I don't need to really be buying random soap or jewelry or whatever. um, so then, you know, I got through the whole airport, and you know, I picked up my bags, you know, um, and you know, then I went out to the front, and there, and then you know, oh man, it was so cold, you know, um, I mean, and I felt really weird. I mean, I knew that there was, you know, inverse seasons because, you know, going from the northern hemisphere to the southern, right? And, you know, summer here in the U.S., but it was winter there. In Australia, it was, I think it was probably pretty close to like the middle of their winter, you know. And so you know, I pulled out my coat and my gloves, whatnot from my, you know, from my bag, and you know, and I took a couple of pictures, and I was just like looking around. I was like, okay, well, wow, and like I saw a couple of, you know, a couple of I think there's a couple of palm trees or whatever it was there, and you know, around, and I was like, wow, you know, just seeing all the things, and I'm like, wow, the cars really do drive on the other side of the road, and you know, and like, you know, and I was able to, you know, look up high, and I saw, you know, this Australian flag, you know, and you know, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders flag, you know, right next to each other, you know, and the sun was, you know, going up, and it was so cold, and it was just like, oh my god, oh my god, and you know, and you know, and then I was trying to figure out, you know, exactly where am I supposed to go, you know, where my you know, where's my I was like, you know, where's my you know, where's my uh you know, where's my transport to the hotel? You know, I didn't know where that was at exactly, so you know, I was going around there, I was walking, I was trying to figure it out, and you know, then I found the spot. I had to wait there a good while, um, you know, and just a whole bunch of random people just walking on by. I was like, wow, it's just like, this is something that so many people do, just like every day. And now, like, I'm I'm one of the many people who've made this long and arduous journey, and I've survived. And I was wide eyed, and I was taking in all these things, and I was like looking around. I was freezing, and then I called home. I was messaging with my parents, and there was, I can't lie, there was so much a part of me that felt very much just like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, there was a part of me that felt just so scared that I was like, I should have just not done this. Like, I just wish I was home. Like, you know, like, I'm scared out of my mind. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. But, you know, and 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 it was so crazy hearing my, I mean, I've had many calls with my parents before, but you know, it was so crazy hearing my dad's voice across across the phone, in a different country for the first time. And he was like, "You got this. I believe in you." And my mom talked with me a little bit too. They're telling me that they're okay and that they were glad that I made it, and they were so proud of me. And you know, and just figure one thing out at a time. Just to get to the hotel and just put my stuff down and just rest. That's what they told me to do. So, eventually, you know, the the transporter came by. I hopped in with my stuff. The driver brought me on over to the hotel. I checked in, and I was just like super emotional, and I was like, I'm so tired. I'm so unbelievably tired. And so then I got the key, went to my room, I put the stuff down, you know, I used the bathroom, I took a shower, whatever. And then I think I just went to bed. I started trying to. And I fell asleep for like 4 or 5 hours or something like that. I don't know, it was a good while. I don't know, I was maybe it was longer than that. I honestly have no idea. I was just wiped out. And came to, I woke up, I think it was like, I don't know, it's like 8 or 9 p.m., something like that. Maybe, I think, if I remember the time, I think it might have been like closer to like 8 or 9, like 20 or 30 or something, but I don't remember the exact time. And I was like, I'm so hungry. But I was also like, I'm so scared to go down there and like get something, and that I did. I went down there, and I ordered my first meal, which I had, which was an Aussie burger and some hot chips and pavlova, I believe it was. It was really good. I was like, wow. I was like, wow, hey, I've eaten my first meal here. I mean, I was like, I know there'll be many more to come, but like, I was like, wow, the food tasted great. And so then, I headed back up, and and I tried to just sit there and just process just like what I just done. Just I again, just I come to Australia, and I was shaking. I was anxious as fuck. And I was like, I just, I felt, to be honest, I felt quite a bit just lonely. I was like, I don't know, I don't have any friends, I don't have any family here. And but fortunately, I was able to, I recorded a couple of videos for myself there, and then I turn on this channel. In fact, you can go back and watch them if you really want to. And then and I was just telling about the whole flights there, and just leaving, just kind of just this really just disbelief that I just done all of that, and then after that, I called my my parents again, and then called one of my friends, and I really needed that, because I was just like, I don't know. I just feel alone, and I really fucking need someone to be here for me. And I'm really grateful to that friend and to my parents for being there for me then. And over the course of the next couple of days, I was able to get a bit better sleep, and I started walking around the city just a little bit. I didn't go that far, but I went to a library. I went to a local cafe, and I had my first meat pie there. It wasn't anything complex. It was just like some kind of just regular, chicken or beef one with some gravy and some mashed potatoes and peas and carrots on top. Wasn't really all that complex, but just had that little thing for for my breakfast there, and my brekkie there, and you know and it was just odd. And and I mean, yeah, fucking frick, I still felt so anxious, but I also felt really curious. I felt really excited too. And I also just felt so. I mean, it was definitely very much tied to the fact that I was just super anxious and just super afraid of, doing anything wrong. But I also just felt so aware. I just felt so aware of every little thing around me. And I felt like my I feel like that my sort of sense of trying to be conscientious of being, being sensitive to my environment, being sensitive to the, you know, the people around me and how are they perceiving things and like what are they saying, what are they doing? It felt like that was turned up to 11, and that was a really strange, um, that was a really strange feeling. It was a really strange sensation. That's absolutely for sure. But I felt, I as much as I felt anxious, I also just felt like, you know, I'm actually gonna be having a fucking adventure. You know, I'm here, and I have this wonderful opportunity ahead of me, and I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't really know just yet what I was gonna try to do. I mean, but it just it felt wonderful too. It felt so wonderful, and you know, so that was quite long and drawn out there, and this is already like 47 minutes or so, and I don't know. I don't know if I don't think I'm really gonna get to talking about a little bit more of the first couple of days per se of once I got there. I mean, maybe I will. Um, Certainly hope I do. And also the same kind of thing about the last little while coming back, and just all the little things, I suppose. just just the whole fucking adventure, I guess. But um, you know, I feel like it's a bit hard to it's kind of frustrating, but it feels a bit hard to try to. I feel like I can remember so many little things in my head, but it feels like as soon as I'm trying to put it into words, I'm trying to verbalize, I'm trying to share it, it feels like it's a bit trickier to do. But, anyways, I hope that you appreciated that. I hope that that made some kind of sense. Um, and thanks for watching. Really, I really appreciate it. I know this is really long. If you like this, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and check out other content that I have on this channel. And just hope you have a good day or night, um, whatever it is for you when you're watching this. And you know, see you in the next video, mate. Bye bye.